Hello there, it's day 21 of me trying to tame all 150 creatures in Ark on official servers where taming times are ridiculous. Last time, I got impregnated by a reaper, made friends with a wyvern, and I tamed my first boss Rex. Ooh, damn, that health! Overall, it was a good start. It really was. 17 tames checked off the list. That's more than I planned. And I did it without having anything better than a primitive crossbow. But I've still got a lot of work to do. The game plan is to get myself a better weapon for faster taming and to raise my Deinonychus to produce some kibble. Getting these is pretty important because I'm pretty sure basic math tells me that taming one thing per day will not get me to 150 in 100 days. So until I get the things I need, I'll continue to go after dinos I do not need to make sleepy, like the wyvern. I packed up my tropical wyvern and headed to the Ark with the easiest wyverns to get, Ragnarok. When I got there, I spawned near the wyvern den and I made my way towards the eggs. I saw a lovely trap and I gave it a quick test to see if it was unlocked. And to my delight, it was. You gotta love this community. The net gun does work on these wyverns, but using a trap is much safer. I headed to the closest nest, which was actually right next to the trap. I had a quick look around for danger, and I grabbed my first egg. There was a lightning wyvern nearby who hunted me down immediately. Its lightning blast was melting my tropical, so I let it into the trap so that I could go back for more eggs. I made my way right back into the den and there was a glorious blue egg. I always get excited when I see blue because lightning wyverns are my favorite of all the wyverns in the game. They are underrated because they are one of the first expansion creatures so long ago, but they still hit like a Mack truck. So when I landed and hopped off to check the level, I was sorely disappointed to see it was only a level 20. But I knew I had more nests to check, so I led the wyverns chasing me into the trap and I headed back for more. This time I found myself a fire egg, but nope, it was not good enough, just the level 55. I didn't waste my time grabbing it because my health was low. One more shot from a lightning wyvern and I'd be fried. I flew down to the next nest and there was once again another fire egg, this time a 25. I started to lose hope, but the next nest is right next door, so I flew on over. And there it was, a 150 lightning wyvern. I was hyped. 150 is not max level, but it would certainly do me well. So I quickly grabbed the egg and off I was. But with that hype moment and all the wyverns still trapped in a nice little cage, I wasn't finished yet. I made my way to the very next nest and there sat another monster egg. This time it was a 160 fire wyvern and boy oh boy I was feeling good. Just up the way, another nest, another 165 fire wyvern. Let's go. And then a 185 poison. I mean, poison are pretty useless in PvE, but I grabbed it anyways. And this is exactly why I come to Ragnarok for eggs. The transfer timer was ticking down and I decided not to risk it anymore. I tossed out Meimei and made my way back to the obelisk. By the way, if you are unfamiliar with the official transfer time, it's probably the worst thing about official servers. You have to have things in your inventory when the transfer timer hits 0 in order to transfer with them. So if you miss, you have to sit around and wait for 15 more minutes. Annoying. When I got back to Gen 1, I checked the stats in my incubator. Unfortunately, the lightning egg had super low melee, but the stamina was high enough I figured it was worth raising anyways. I was pretty happy with the 165 fire wyvern. That would be my strongest dino pretty much at this point, so I was really excited to get that one raised up. As my dinos grew, I knew I'd be needing more cryopods, so I grabbed the necessary resources, which I already have, and I headed over to a loot drop. Since I don't have a tech replicator, this is the only way for me to craft these, and buying them in the Hexagon store was getting a bit expensive. They are much cheaper just to craft. I jumped back into the circuit chase mission because the world buff for loot was ending. And as always, my quest for a long neck and Rex saddle BP could only continue if the loot was getting buffed. And with no direction or plan in place, I was bouncing from thing to thing. I still felt very underpowered and I wanted to tame something I could use. So I set my sights back on prepping to get a shadow mane. It was likely going to take multiple fishing excursions to get all the fish I needed to tame a decent one. So I headed out and got myself some fish. It makes a big difference between a 1 times fish and a 1.5 times fish for taming. So as always, it's important to be picky with the fish you get. I found some decent ones that would be usable and I gathered them up. Of course, I ran into some stupid piranhas on the way, always the most annoying part of this process. Except when a Hesperornis kills your fish, because that's way more annoying. The fish only last 45 minutes in your basket, and since it was going to be a while before I was actually ready to go tame a Shadowmane, I cryoled them up. This way they will literally last forever and you can throw them out and re-fish basket them when you need them. Also, checking things off the list. So I knew I was going to need some more fish later. But for now, I finished the day doing some super quick resource runs. I got some berries, some stone, and a little metal to top things off. At the start of the day, my Deinonychus had finished raising. These guys raise super quick compared to most dinos, even on 1 times, which is another reason why they are perfect for kibble farms. And since they were male and female, I got to breeding them so I could get my farm up and running. I grabbed the egg and tossed it in the incubator, hoping for a female. Indeed it was, so I left it in there to cook. I needed as many females as I could get my hands on so that we could up the egg production. Any male eggs I could use right away for kibble, but since it takes up to 2 days in real life for dinos to be able to breed once again, I was going to need as many as possible to help speed up the process. I checked my Reaper as well, and it was coming along nicely. I knew I was still in need of some Rexes for breeding, so I decided to head out and search once again. I grabbed Meimei and made our way around the map. I came across a nice high-level female, but I was at this point only looking for a male. I didn't need to min-max stats here since I already had a good female. I didn't want to waste my time, so males were really the priority. I came across a solid 135 and decided this was my dude. I began the all-too-familiar tranking process and had some followers like usual, but I got him separated and eventually made him go night-night. I headed back out to search for even more. I was really hoping for a higher level tech Rex, but I still figured I could probably get another regular Rex too since they are so easy to tame. Also, this map has so many, so I should be able to find something decent. Besides, it was another opportunity to grab some more drops. Oh, okay, Ark. First the tech bow, and now the rifle that I can't use. I see how it is. Eventually, I ran into a low-level strider with a drill face. At this point, I was tired of looking for Rexes and I needed a break. Also, taming a strider was like my #1 priority early on like day 1, and I kind of just completely forgot about it. So I knew this was my chance. It was not the perfect strider, meaning it did not have saddlebags, nor was it anywhere near my base, but I needed one so bad, so I made the move on it. Plus, it was only a level 50 and these things can get annoying to tame. You'll see what I mean in a minute. I already had my Mutagel on me because I've been carrying it around literally everywhere just in case. To tame these metal beasts, you have to hack both parts. This can be an annoying process because in between they have to walk a certain distance from their last location, and sometimes they just like to walk in circles. So I followed it around, rode on its back as I watched the tracker get closer and closer to 0, and then shoot back up over and over again. I also ran into the issue of having behemoth gates blocking my path. Sometimes the strider gets stuck and doesn't know what to do. As dope as this gotcha tower base was, I was super annoyed by it at this point. But eventually, it got unstuck and I continued to wait patiently, following it around. As the day came to an end, I was nearing finishing this bad boy up. And just as the new day began, I got my strider. All in all, it took about a half day or 30 minutes in real life. Now, I just needed to get it all the way back to my base on the other side of the map. So I began the extremely long journey. This is a tedious process and I got bored at one point and I stopped paying attention, which was a mistake because I almost lost my strider into the depths. Thank God it landed on the edge, because if it fell into the water, I'm pretty sure that would have been game over. But after this little misstep, I made it back to my base. I parked it nearby at a metal spot so that I could easily farm metal. And after that 30-minute journey took half a day, I wanted to not have to move that thing ever again. At this point, my Rex was probably starving by now and ready to be tamed, so I got myself some more mutton and I went to feed it. There was an alpha raptor nearby, so I threw out my tech Rex for some support, because there is nothing worse than losing a tame immediately after you tame it. But easy enough to kill the raptor, I scooped up my Rexes and was on my way. So once I got that taken care of, it was right back to my brand new Strider. And just like that, I was swimming in resources on 1x. And this is why you need a Strider. Now that I had some good metal cooking up, I got to breeding. I mated my 2 regular Rexes and threw the egg in the incubator. The HP was solid 36 points, I was happy. But unfortunately, this egg got the lower melee, and I really didn't think 26 points in melee was gonna be enough. But I decided to let this egg hatch anyways. I knew I was gonna have to do more Rex hunting soon. But also my wyverns were ready to hatch. And when I popped them open, I was absolutely delighted with the colors of the fire wyvern. This purple and yellow was hot. The lightning was kinda ugly, but in a cool way. It's way better than the plain normal colors of the lightning wyvern, so I was happy. Now that I had babies out, I needed a safe place to put them. I couldn't risk a level 20 stupid raptor coming and killing my defenseless babies. So I put my new Strider to work and gathered up some resources to build behemoth gates. Also, busted out my chainsaw to gather up some wood. The Strider doesn't harvest wood very well, so the chainsaw is really still the way to go. And just as the day was coming to an end, I got my small but safe breeding area established. When I logged back in on day 24, some time had passed and my wyverns were ready for their first feeding. So I grabbed my tropical wyvern and headed back to Ragnarok because they need wyvern milk. In order to get milk, I was going to have to knock out a female and steal it. This should be a nice, smooth process. But then again, this is Ark, and you never know. I found one in no time at all, and I got it trapped. My crappy long neck eventually was able to knock it out, and with no trouble I got my milk, and I was on my way. I grabbed a couple more eggs that I could use for Kibble, since I didn't have my farm up and running, and I headed back to the obelisk to transfer. Once I got back, my Reaper was all grown up. Finally! This was now my strongest dino. Now that I had more and more babies coming, I decided it was time to get myself another Meimei. They aren't just the best traveler in the game, they are essential for breeding. It is the only way to feed a baby dino without doing it by hand, and that is an absolute pain in the ass. I have no idea how any of us did any breeding before the Meimei was introduced. So I found a nice cool looking one, knocked him out. Once I got it saddled up and threw some meat on it, it would now become my dedicated mommy Meimei. As the day was coming to an end, I wanted to squeeze in one more task that I had left unfinished. I grabbed my fish baskets and headed to the river to get a few more fish so that I could be fully prepared to tame a Shadowmane when the moment was right. I still had a ton of things to tame, but also my base was just getting so overwhelming, so it was time to expand. I made my way over to my new Strider and I started farming up the essentials for stone structures. Lots of stone, lots of wood, lots of thatch, in just a couple of minutes. Zap zap, using that Strider never gets old. I crafted a bunch of pillars and ceilings and started placing my foundation to the structure I was hoping to build. Building is one of my favorite things to do in this game, despite the challenges on vanilla, but I am by no means a fast builder, and so the progress was slow. Also, even with the Strider, it takes some time to farm, simply because I have to craft all these structures in my inventory. So after about a half a day and basically no progress at all, I decided my time would be spent better elsewhere. I tend to get lost in the sauce when it comes to building, and if I didn't stop myself now, the next thing I know, it would be 5 days later and I'd have a castle built. A completely unnecessarily large castle. So, off to do more missions. I wanted to get myself some hexagons, so I did the easiest mission for that, the Velonosaur stock. I wasn't sure if I could handle alpha, so I started with beta, and it was time to put my Reaper to the test. I breezed through it no problem at all, but even the beta mission is extremely easy. I figured why not give the alpha a shot. I knew it would be risky to do with my Reaper alone, so I brought my Rex as backup. I made my way to the first part and took care of the Velonosaur with ease. I wasn't doing very much damage, but the tankiness of the Reaper would hold no problem. I got to the second part and easily passed that as well. For the third and final part, I knew I'd have to be cautious. I tried to separate all the enemies to take them one-on-one in smaller groups. They have so much health and also do quite a bit of damage, so this was going to have to be a strategy play instead of the normal brute force method. My Reaper's health got lower and lower and backed into a corner. I started to get a little worried, but my Reaper popped up on a ledge and the enemies couldn't really get me, so I continued to lower their health until I got one of the thorny dragons down. Those are the tankiest of the bunch, so I felt good about getting this done. Mission accomplished. I made my way back to base and the day was coming to an end. I did some things around my base, took care of some eggs hatched, some new Deinonychus, and checked on my baby's food. I spent more time getting a little bit of metal and then organizing my base. Since I decided against building a new spot for now, I needed to at least get organized. Not the most productive day, but definitely needed before I went insane from my OCD. Once again, without a real plan in place, I wasn't sure what to do, so I reverted back to what has been habit recently. I grabbed some hunting gear and took Meimei out to look for a male Tech Rex and to farm more loot. And very quickly we ran into two 156 male Tech Rexes. If I got one of these, I could definitively start my Tech Rex boss breeding. I checked the stats on the two, but really I just went after the one with the better color. As usual with my lowly long neck, it took a bit to knock out. But I got it down with no problems. I had a while to go on my Rex still, so while I waited, I started the day doing what I do best, more loot farming. Also, I was still looking for more Rexes, and honestly, I'm not really sure why. I kind of got sucked into the habit of min-maxing and trying to get the absolute best stats. Both the Tech Rex and regular Rexes I have would be more than what I needed, but I couldn't help myself to try and find one with even higher melee. Plus, since I was already loot farming, looking for Rexes just became a hand-in-hand habit at this point. After making a full lap of the map, I came back to my Rex and I was surprised to see a Carcharodontosaurus. Unfortunately, it was a very low level, but when I thought about it for a minute, this was actually a good thing. Right now, with 1x means, it would be a super simple thing to tame up, and I could at least check this one off the list. Even if I needed better ones for practical use, I could get those later. Besides, I've only tamed one of these one time, so I could definitely use the practice. But I wanted to make sure I took care of the Rex first. So I went to get some mutton and I came back, threw it on him, and tamed him up. His stats came out pretty good. I was really happy with the melee. So when I got back, I quickly bred up my Tech Rexes and put the eggs in the incubator. I didn't get the high stat of the mom's health, but I did get the melee. Either way, this would be a good enough for boss fights with a full squad and a Yeti. However, I wasn't satisfied. I really wanted that super high HP bred into it. So I'd raise this one and keep trying to get that combined stat. Now that I knew I was focused on Tech Rexes, I didn't really care about the regular ones. So I grabbed one of the ones that was raising so I could use it to tame the Cark. Now, of course, this game forces you to be brutal, so I had no choice. I murdered my baby Rex in cold blood so that I could feed it to a much bigger dino. I grabbed my baby and dragged its body to the mighty Cark. Of course, there were some hungry dragonflies chasing me for the food, but I didn't want to fight them off because I only had this one Rex, and I didn't want to accidentally destroy the body. So I just kept running towards the Cark. I had just enough speed to where they couldn't catch me, and when I made it to the Cark, the dragonflies got a little bite in there, but the Cark ate most of it and was ready to be ridden. I got on his back and ravaged those dragonflies and a bunch of other stuff.
Odontosaurus medicupestis.
On my way back, I was delighted to find an Argiga right in the exact spot where the Kark had just spawned in. I knew what my plan was the next day. I gathered up the necessary things I would need to tame the Giga. It took a few minutes as I wasn't prepared and scrambled to get my narcotics, tranks, and a trap ready to go. I also had to get mutton ahead of time because I didn't have Kibble, and you literally can't leave a Giga side for more than 2 minutes without it waking up, so I got prepared. And when I was ready to tame it, I made my way over there, hoping it didn't despawn on me like the last one I found. Thankfully, he was sitting right there when I landed, in all his glorious beauty. And just as I was deciding where to put the trap, I noticed nothing was moving. Oh no. Oh no. No, no. Ah, there it is. Crap. Right by that Giga. Oh, I hope it doesn't roll back. There is always a wave of anxiety when a crash happens. My first thought is, will there be a rollback? I just tamed the Kark, so I was especially nervous of that happening. As I waited to log back into what felt like forever, I finally got in and immediately noticed there was indeed a rollback, and my heart sank. I checked my tribe log to see what happened, and to my surprise, there it was. Turok tamed a Kark. This means it didn't roll back very far and I was safe. Or was I? I realized it said a Carno had killed me, which must have meant it rolled back to somewhere where I'd been flying around with Meimei. This means poor Meimei was lost somewhere and defenseless. If a Carno killed me, then it was probably going to kill Meimei, but it didn't say anything in the log yet, so there was still hope. My anxiety shot back up as I raced to retrace my steps. I flew everywhere in the area, but I couldn't find anything. I knew my body should be showing a green beam, but it was nowhere to be found. After searching and searching, I finally found my body, and just as I regained hope... no! Meimei, no! Ouch. This one hurt. I've lost many dinos before, but Meimei was special. She was my first tame in this challenge, and she had gotten me through so much already. Also, I loved her colors. I was hurting, not gonna lie, but the tragedy did not end there. In my frustration and anger, consumed by my emotions, I lost focus. I was furious, so I slaughtered the Carnos that killed Meimei and I avenged her death. I wanted nothing else than to go back to my base and call it a day. So I quickly checked for a body bag, and since I didn't see one, I assumed I already had everything on me. Also, I was upset. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. But after being back at my base for a short while, I realized something was missing. Wait, where's my Reaper? No. I checked everything I own's inventory to see if it was in there, but in my heart, I knew exactly where it was. I grabbed my other Maywing and went back to double check the spot for a body bag. But I had already went AFK for a good amount of time, and bags only last for a short period. So at this point, the bag was almost certainly gone. I was 99% sure that the Reaper was on Meimei when she died, but there was only one way to be 100%. So I went back and I checked the tape, and sure enough, there it is, sitting in her inventory with a few other empty cryos. RIP Reaper. I gotta say this was a tough one. The toughest arcing I've had in a very long time, and here's why. It was the way the whole thing played out. The roller coaster of anxiety from the moment I crashed, having to worry about losing my Kark to a rollback, then feeling relieved but instantly having anxiety, realizing my body and stuff was gone. And then I got hope once again when I found my beam, and there was no death note in my tribe log, only to immediately be crushed as soon as I got there, seeing the death message on my screen. Then on top of that, The stupid human error that I made by not thoroughly checking the area for a death bag. Yes, this was 100% my fault, but it was brought on by a stupid Ark scenario. Oh, and on top of all that, the Giga I crashed in front of was now gone. So what a nice little cherry on top. Oh man, I needed a break. I had to take some real time off in real life. When I returned, I started feeling a little behind. The days were ticking away, but I was making little to no progress on taming. But I hadn't been able to make any kibble, and I still had no luck with a better long neck rifle. I knew once I got these things I could really up my taming numbers, but until then, I would continue working on other things. My tech Rexes were ready to hatch, and so I started out the day getting them set up to raise on the Meimei. I didn't have the combined stats I wanted yet, so I decided I'd breed both tech and regular Rexes for now. After that, I knew the first thing I needed to do. Meimei was irreplaceable, but I needed another Meimei for travel. I found another cool looking one and made quick work of the taming. While it was taming up, I ran Circuit Chase once again to kill some time, and because the buff was once again gone. After I got back, I did a little more resource farming. I didn't really have any direction and kind of was just wasting time. I knew I needed to get back to taming, but I was still so hesitant without Kibble. And honestly, I was still feeling it from losing Meimei and my Reaper. Having to get another Reaper, let alone all the other harder tames, was feeling like an overwhelming task at this point. So I took a bit of time to just organize my base and plan out my next move. I knew getting a proper base setup would help me move on, get things going. So I went ahead and tore down the pillars I set up before in order to make space for a new base. I got some foundations put in place and continued to mass farm stone, wood, and thatch to make stone structures. But before I could make too much progress on it, it was time to feed my wyverns. So I made my way back to Rag with Trops. That's what I named my wyvern, by the way, and I'm not sure when I did it. Gladly, I was able to make it in and out with no issues. Using the standard trap and net gun method, I got my milk and was out of there in no time. When I got back, I fed my wyverns and put the extra milk I have in the preserving bin. It lasts 9 hours in there with salts, so I figured I'd try to store these and see if I could get 2 feedings in on the wyverns without having to go back. I took my new Meimei out, who I named Blueski, because, well, he's blue, and did a loot run. In fact, I did more than a loot run. I spent pretty much the first half of the day grabbing everything, everywhere. Of course, still no luck with Rex Saddle or a long neck. But no surprise, because I was farming blue and green drops, which don't actually contain them. However, I was getting so much stuff. In fact, I was getting overwhelmed with storage, so I knew I was going to need a grinder ASAP. I stopped back at base to drop some stuff off and check what else I needed to build a grinder. I had everything except for the 600 poly, so I figured I could probably just go farm that from chainsawing some mantis, and it should be pretty easy. I grabbed my saw and I made my way to the other side, but I was having trouble finding them, and each one doesn't give all that much on one times, unfortunately. I already felt I wasted a ton of the day, and I didn't necessarily want to grind this out right now. But then my luck finally seemed to turn around, because just as I was getting ready to head back to base, I grabbed one more drop. And it's as if Ark finally decided to lend a hand and give me a grinder. So when I got back, I placed it down on my newly made up foundations. And before I got to grinding my excessive loot, I wanted to make some progress on gaining levels. And a simple and passive-ish way to do that is to grind wood. So I filled it up with wood and got to grinding as I watched my XP gain just skyrocket. But I finished out the day just grinding wood upon wood and continuing my everlasting quest for better loot. My kibble farm is finally getting underway a little bit, so I figured I could start crafting some up. But I was still missing one ingredient. I needed honey. And seeing as how I didn't have a bee yet, I was going to need to make my way back to Crystal Isles to farm some up. I grabbed Trops and we made our way over. With just my basic pick, I was able to gather up more honey than I needed. But before it was time to go back, I had a bunch of time left on the transfer timer. So instead of logging off and waiting, I decided to find something to do. I flew Blueski over to where the wyvern nests are to see if I could find myself another wyvern. Trops was pretty weak considering he wasn't imprinted, and it would be nice to have something a little stronger in case I have to face off against those lightning wyverns again. But as is typical, there wasn't any eggs for me. So after wasting a good chunk of the day, I finally made my way back home to Genesis 2. I had a couple more Rex eggs as well as Deinonychus eggs to hatch, so I popped them open and got them set up on the baby trough. I continued to use my newly acquired grinder to grind more wood. Anytime I was near my base, I figured I'd just keep that grinder going. There are some really valuable things that I wanted to unlock at the higher levels, so the sooner I get there, the better. I threw out my Bronto and collected up some berries because the narcotic production never ends. I wanted to craft up some medical brews also, and I would need some narcotics for that. Once I had gotten a few things gathered up and cooked some meat, I was able to craft a few recipes, including the one I needed to make Kibble. I got my med brews, my focal chili for speed and fast crafting, and some Lazarus chowder to make the Kibble. I had another raptor pest problem. It was just feeding on my Deinonychus as they just helplessly let it happen. But I saw what was going down in time to rescue them, so I hopped on the back of one and slaughtered this stupid raptor. No deaths, but a close call. I gotta do something about these attacks and hurry up and move my base inside these walls that I built up. I started the day by finally crafting some kibble. This extraordinary kibble works for all dinos that eat kibble, so it's really the ultimate kibble. And that's why getting Deinonychus eggs was so important, because you need certain eggs to craft it. So I used the Deinonychus eggs I had, as well as the extra low-level wyvern eggs I had collected to make my first batch of kibble. This was going to make taming so much easier, and I could actually start to make progress now because I was really falling behind. I was tired of having to farm mutton every time, and also berry eaters just take too damn long without kibble. So after that raptor attack, I knew it was finally time to move my babies and other dinos inside the walls. I got my Deinonychus, my Rexes, and of course my juvenile wyverns, moved them over to the safe zone. Now I didn't have to worry anymore. And I couldn't have done it at a better time because there was an alpha raptor right near my base. Once I got my base nice and safe, it was time to head back out for some more loot. Me and Bluesky watched the night sky come to a halt as our spaceship reached a new destination. That meant a new color of drops. It was green drops today, which meant no long necks, but that's okay. I still wanted to get my hands on some ride gear and some other things. And now that I had a grinder, getting all this extra stuff wouldn't be a huge waste of time. It wasn't long into the loot farming, like literally only grabbed a couple drops before I came across a beehive. Now that kibble was on the table, I needed to get access to honey. And also, I needed to tame a bee, so I just went brute force and tried to tame it the way I remember. And let me just say, I was definitely doing it wrong. I went in to break the hive open to get the queen to come out, but I forgot how freaking strong these hives were, and even my ascendant pike wasn't doing the job. The angry bees came out and swarmed me. Without decent armor, they absolutely shredded my health. I instantly knew this was not going to work this way, so I flew back to base quickly and I grabbed some cactus broth. Cactus broth makes you basically invisible to all creatures, so I thought this was a sure way to stop the bees from attacking me. I had my tech helmet activated so that it was easier to see the bees, but when I landed to regain my health, I couldn't seem to find the queen. She must have despawned. Luckily, there was another hive right nearby, so I got to work on this one. I was getting super annoyed and frustrated. I have tamed bees before and I don't remember it being so freaking hard. Try after try, I just couldn't get her to feed. and all I needed was literally one feeding. But nope, it just wasn't working. So I decided to cut my losses as I was getting super annoyed, and I headed back to base. I had a few things to do around my base to start out the day. I managed my babies and made sure they were all nice and fed and kept up on the imprints. Then I did a bit of research. I realized while taming the bees the day prior, I wasn't using the right consumable. Cactus broth is not what I needed. I needed bug repellent because, of course, bees are bugs. Duh. Bug repellent is pretty easy to craft, so I made some real quick. I just needed to buy some fur from the hex store, and there I had it. I also grabbed some gilly just in case, and I was determined to get myself a bee. So me and Bluesky headed back out to see if we could find a hive. I went back to the same location, and it looks like another had spawned in right nearby. Just like that. But I wasn't done yet. The other queen was still floating nearby. So I made my move and I went right up to her, and just like that, she was also mine. Wow, that bug repellent was really essential. I did not know how absolutely necessary that was gonna be. I cryoed my 2 bees and off I went. There was a lot of day left and it was red drops, which are the ones I needed. So before heading home, I did some more loot farming. And boy, oh boy, am I glad I did. It finally came to me. A 248% long neck BP. I was so used to grabbing things just putting in my inventory that I almost missed it. But finally, this thing was so much better than what I was using. I finally felt like I could actually get some serious taming done now. So it was time to head back to base. I threw out my bees so that I could get my hive set up. Now that I had a long neck, taming was going to be ramping up quite a bit, so I was going to need to get my kibble produced as well. So I loaded the hive with rare flowers, and now I just have to wait. As the day was coming near an end, I continued to just watch over my babies and check on their food levels. Also, got my Deinonychus breeding some more, once again for even more eggs. I flew off to grab a drop nearby my base because, well, I still needed a Rex saddle. And while I didn't find one in this drop, I found something maybe even more valuable right now. A low-level strider with the drill face and saddlebags. My current strider is superior to just about anything in the game for farming, but it gets even better. When the strider has saddlebags, it significantly reduces the weight, which meant I didn't have to stop every 10 seconds to empty my inventory. This probably wasn't an essential tame, but I felt compelled to tame it anyways. I went back to base to drop off my stuff and then right back after the strider. I started the hacking process and off I was. Luckily there were not really any hostile creatures nearby, nor any giant bases blocking my path like last time. I knew I just had to be patient and I should be able to tame this up with no problem. But just as I was overly confident, a Sarco decided to attack my strider. I quickly rid of that Sarco by busting out my shotgun and blasting it to bits. I was afraid I'd have to start the taming process over, but to my delight, the meter didn't drop. So, right back to taming. And with no other issues and a relatively quick process, I now finally had the strider I had been searching for since day one. Now I just had to walk it back to base. This one wasn't too far, unlike the last one, which I had to take across the whole map. And as I was on my way, I zapped up some resources on the way back, and damn, it felt good. Having those bags allows me to hold like 50 times the amount of stuff. Even this level 20 strider feels game breaking, so I'm super pumped to finally have it. Now that I had that taken care of and resources would be even easier to get, it was time to craft my long neck. It's actually pretty cheap to craft, so I didn't even need to do any farming. But I did need more narcotics, so I got back on the Strider and scooped up berries. Now that I had everything I needed, a good rifle, plenty of darts, plenty of narcotics, and actually having some kibble, I was finally ready to really amp up the taming. Because, well, I am way off track and I need to get moving. So even though I have everything I needed, I wanted to make taming even easier. So I wanted to activate the in-world buff that gives 1.5 times taming. In order to do that, I just needed to complete the Survive the Ark mission. I already did it on Gamma once, but the Gamma version only gives a 3-hour buff. If I wanted it to last longer, I needed to do the Beta, which would give a buff for 12 hours. So I grabbed my best gear, which was really good at this point from all the loot farming. I made sure to get my tech canteens filled up and got some free curry to make me run faster because this mission is all about speed. I started out the first round by grabbing the bow. The wyvern spawned in right away, which is always the priority in the first round. Once I took care of it, I knew the rest would be easy. After the first round, I got myself the tech bow. Even in beta, the tech bow annihilates everything in its path. Now I just had to be cautious of taking a bit too much damage or getting lagged out into a pile of enemies. Once again, the wyverns are priority in this round. That lightning wyvern will shred you to bits in seconds. Next round, it was time to purchase some Shadowmanes. The Shadowmanes are super tanky and can aggro all the dinos while you just sit back and light them up. Next round was Aberration Dinos, and since I had enough credits, I got myself even more Shadowmanes. Next round, I needed to repurchase my tech bow, but I also continued to get more Shadowmanes, and again breezed through this round as my army continued to grow. These rounds were going faster and faster the more shadows I got, and I continued to cruise through this mission. As I made my way into the final round, I still had most of my shadows left. Some of them started to lose health, but I knew I could purchase more in this round if I needed. The final round, you need to be careful because these Zondodos do insane fire damage, and if you don't watch your back, they can hit you and drain your health.
Was worth it.
Victory! Overall, it took a little more than half the day, so once I got back, it was time to tame. First on the list was this tech Quetzal that had been flying around near my base. I grabbed my new long neck and flew up to his level to start firing away. He proved to be a bit skittish and hard to hit, but his low level meant he didn't need many shots from my long neck. After suffering through a few unregistered hits, thanks Ark, my shots finally started to count. But he fell from the sky exactly where I did not want him to. It was in that glitchy part of the map where every time I try to fly into it, I get stuck and I bug out. So I left it for now, hoping it wouldn't be too much of a problem. I did some quick things around my base like feed my babies. Then I grabbed some narcotics and went over to the Quetzal. The bugginess seemed to mostly affect me when I was using my tech suit or when I was just in the air. So I figured if I could get my feet on the ground and climb down, I should be able to make it. Sure enough, once I made contact with the surface, I was able to slowly scale down to my Quetzal and put some narcotics on him so he doesn't wake up. These things wake up pretty quickly, but his low level shouldn't take too many narcotics. Once I kept him under, I went off to get some mutton to feed him. Again, since he's a low level, I didn't really want to waste my kibble on him. I made it back to the Quetzal with the same method I just used and once again was able to make it down without too much trouble. I fed him and just laid down next to him until it was tamed. My wyverns are making good progress, but it was once again time to feed them. I made my way over to Ragnarok and gathered up some milk. A smooth process with no issues, in and out in 5 minutes. That could not have gone better. You gotta love when it's that easy. It was finally time to tame my Shadowmane, which is my favorite creature in the game. I grabbed all the fish I had previously caught in my cryopods and all my crafted fish baskets, and I was off to Rockwell's side to hunt me down some shadows. They are all over the place over here. Now I just had to find the perfect one to tame. I knew I could get something pretty high level with all my fish, and so I had my sights set on something 130 or above. There were a couple in the area, so I made the move to put down my trap. I built the Shadowmane box and cleared the area with my Rex. There sat a gorgeous 140 male, and I knew I absolutely had to tame this one. I said, forget about how long this is going to take. I really wanted it. So I aggroed him towards my trap. These Shadowmanes used to teleport attack you and they would fall right into the trap, but I'm pretty sure they patched that out because that wasn't working anymore. So while he attacked my trap, I quickly crafted a ramp and placed it down. I was able to get him up and into the trap without too much of a struggle, and once he was in, all I needed to do was go out of render so that he would calm down and stop attacking. Alright, I was hyped. The hard part was over. Now, all I needed to do was patiently feed this thing and I'd have myself an amazing Shadowmane. I cleared the rest of the dinos out of the area in the river so I could throw out my fish and get them into the fish baskets. Now that I had everything set up, it was time to start feeding. You have to wait until the Shadowmane lies down, then crouch up behind it and feed it. I use this trap method because that way things in the area won't mess up the tame, which will happen every single time with these slow taming rates. You once could feed them through the walls, but that no longer works either. This might not be the cheapest method, but it's definitely the safest. On 1x rates, you don't want to take any chances, and spending a few extra resources on stone walls is 100% worth it. The first feed only gave him 4.2%, and I knew this was gonna be a brutal tame. My next day was just beginning, but the in-world day was coming to an end. Shadowmanes can only be tamed during the daytime, so I knew I was going to have to be patient and let it sit here until tomorrow. But as long as you initiate the taming process or give it at least one fish, it would stay safely in his box for as long as I needed him to. I did squeeze in one more feeding though before nighttime, and then I sat and I waited. When daytime finally came around, I got my fish all ready and began the process. My hope was that it could get done before the next nightfall so that I didn't have to wait another 30-minute period of sitting around doing nothing. I started feeding it, taking the wall down, feeding him fish, and putting him back in his cage. All was going smoothly, feeding after feeding. As I was nearing 50%, I started to get impatient. I wanted this thing to tame so badly, and I really couldn't afford to waste a whole other night, so I made an absolutely fatal error. Oh no. he laid down for his next feeding, I was not ready. I didn't have my fish in my last lot, and I had to hurry it up. This led me to be careless. The shadow mane was too close to the wall, and I should have just put the wall back up and waited literally just 2 more minutes for him to sit back down. But nope, because I was in such a hurry, I got too close to the shadow mane, and he said, "Nope, you will not have me, sir." All that taming progress all the way back down to 0. I literally just stood there in disbelief for almost 5 minutes. I honestly didn't know what to do. I knew any other time I'd just go spend an hour gathering more fish and he'd be right here when I got back. But this wasn't 100 days playthrough, and I couldn't spend another 2 days trying to tame him. I was already so incredibly far behind on my schedule. I knew in my heart I had to move on, but man, this was tough, and I really didn't know how to move forward from here. I went back to base, and I just called it an early day and logged off. After taking some time to get over that travesty, I started out day 38 trying to get back to my routine. I still knew I had so many things to tame, but I wasn't 100% confident in my Rexes. And since I wasn't going to have time to fail a boss fight and then breed up more and do it all over again, I wanted to make sure I had Rexes that were more than good enough to be safe. So I went back out to hunt. I found a female around level 100. I still needed more female breeders, so this was a good one to knock out and tame. It was super leggy, and pretty much half my shots didn't count, but I have plenty of darts, so eventually I was able to get it down. There was an alpha carno near my Rex, but I didn't really care too much about it, so I didn't even bother fencing it in. I left render and went back out looking for more because I really only needed a male tech Rex at this point. And not much further into this day's hunt, I found something really nice. An almost max level male tech Rex, a 174. This was it. Once I had this bad boy, I could finally start breeding for real, and I no longer needed to waste any more time hunting down Rexes, because lately that's literally all I've been doing. So I made sure to take extra care taming this one. I started tranking it, but not long into the process, this Rex was fighting everything. It got into a brawl with some direwolves, and I seriously began to worry. Its health was getting lower and lower, and I had to do something ASAP. I could not lose this Rex after 40 days, basically, of looking for it. So I made a quick move and I killed the wolf before it killed my Rex. But the Rex was still hungry, and it went after the next closest thing, a Bronto. I continued to trank the Rex, but Brontos will fight back, and my Rex had less than 20% of his health. So I watched both of their health closely with HLNA. I knew if the Rex killed the Bronto and ate him, his health would shoot back up. And that's exactly what happened. Now I could finish tranking him without worrying about him dying. And good thing too, because a nearby Sarco and Trike wanted to join the fight and try to kill my Rex too. But we took care of them together, and I finished knocking this bad boy out. I very quickly left render and headed back to base. My focus was on this Rex, but I didn't want to sit around and waste time, and it was going to take a full day. So while it was taming, I did some more casual loot farming. And after I farmed some loot, I just did some maintenance things around my base, like taking care of my little ones. And eventually I decided I didn't want to wait any longer, so I went ahead and logged off so my Rex could finish without me having to worry about it. When I logged back in, it was time to go to get my female Rex. I quickly grabbed some mutton nearby and went to tame her. Another tech Rex breeder ready to go. And after just a little bit longer, it was finally time to go get my other Rex. I grabbed what little kibble I had made up so far, which was just enough for the Rex. I wanted to get every level and as high taming efficiency as possible, so I was perfectly okay with burning all my kibble. I made my way to my Rex and was sure to be extra careful. I cleared out the dangerous dinos nearby. I fed the Rex his kibble, and he was all mine. Let's go, level 259. And I didn't notice it at the time, but his melee stat was freaking awesome. If I could combine this with the HP of the Rex I tamed on day 14, these would be absolute monsters with 0 mutations. So that was my goal. I bred the Rexes, and the egg didn't give me the combined stats I wanted, but I had plenty of time to keep trying. I began the day hatching some of the eggs that were ready to go. I noticed the in-world taming buff was still active as well as the loot crate buff, so I grabbed my taming gear and blue ski because I figured I'd make a trip around the map. After an unsuccessful trip around the map, I made it back to my base and found a Fioma nearby. Last time I tried to trank one of these, my weapons were just not good enough. So now that I had a long neck, I was able to easily take him down. I got the narcotics on him and gave him his berries, and off to tame more things. There was a Moschops nearby, so I set my sights on him. Super easy tame, usually, at least. They are passive and you just feed them random things, but sometimes they want items you may not have. However, I should be okay. Fortunately, this guy just wanted some classic Mijo berries. I gave him his food of choice and waited until he was hungry again. In the meantime, I went after the nearby Diplo. In between feedings, I was able to knock out the Diplo, and as soon as he was down, Mr. Moschops was ready for his last feeding. Next up was this super low level kangaroo, also known as a Prosoptodon. I probably should have grabbed a net gun because these dudes are freaking fast and really hard to hit. But despite my struggles, we got him down near the others. These guys like rare mushrooms, which I have no idea where you can actually harvest on this map. But fortunately, HLNA had me covered. I then went after a nearby stego because, well, mine died. There was a turtle at the river near my base, another low-level dino, and easy tame. I got him knocked out too with just a couple shots. Shortly after, my Fioma finished up. And just a little bit long after that, my Prosoptodon finished as well, otherwise known as a kangaroo. The Diplo was going to take some time, but it needed very little management, so I went back out to look for more dinos to tame and grab some more drops. And while out and about, I ran into a 174 female Tech Rex, the perfect companion for my 174 male. Honestly, I did not need to tame this thing at this point. I already had more than enough Rexes and everything I needed. But really, there was no way I could just sit by and not tame this thing. So, I went after it. Luckily, it went down quick with no issues, and I was off. Now I just had to wait. My turtle was finished, so I went back and crowed him out of the river. Day 40. When I logged in, my Diplo was just about finished. I went over to grab some mutton for my Rex because I was all out of kibble and I didn't quite have enough eggs to make more, so mutton was going to have to do. And when I got back, the Diplo was all done. I crowed him and the stego up, and I went off to tame this Rex. I fed her the mutton and she was all mine, just like that. But when I checked her stats, I was a little bummed to see neither the HP or the melee was higher than what I already had. And this is exactly why I knew I did not need to tame this in the first place. But regardless, it was still another female breeder and a good enough one to take into boss fights. So if I didn't get the higher stats, I could definitely still use these ones. So I bred her with my good male when I got back, and I let the egg incubate. After burning all my kibble on that first tech wreck, I knew I was going to need more. And my kibble farm wasn't all that efficient yet, so I decided to head back to Valguero for more eggs. This time I shouldn't have to worry about them spoiling since I was here not that long ago. But sadly, I could only find 2 on this server, so I went over to the next Val server. And same garbage. This time, I only found 1 egg. Not sure what this is all about. These servers are still empty. I know people aren't out here grabbing these eggs, but I guess it's just not in the cards right now. When I logged in, my wyverns were finally done. Yay! I took my gorgeous purple and gold fire wyvern out for a first flight. It's been a long time since I've had an OG fire wyvern and I wanted to test its damage. So I found an easy target and lit it up. I used HLNA to pull up the stats and damn! Even with just a few levels in this thing, its fire breath did just about 1,000 damage. This was by far my strongest dino at this point, so I was pretty hyped about it. Some time had passed and my Rexes were ready to breed again, so I mated them and grabbed the eggs. And when I put the egg in the incubator, there it was. Woo! 41 points in HP, 42 points in melee. Now, if these numbers mean nothing to you, just know that this is insanely good. I'm not exaggerating when I say this is almost as good as it gets for an unmutated dinosaur. This is a breeder's dream starting line, and extremely rare to be able to start this good. It's easily the best stat Rex I've ever had in Ark without having mutations on it. This was freaking awesome and was way more powerful than what I even needed for these gamma bosses. Now I could officially, finally, be done with taming freaking Rexes. But I still need that Rex saddle BP. So with orange straps out in the world, I saw it as a chance to find one. But once again, luck was not on my side. After a half a day of just grabbing loot, I was once again left disappointed and overloaded with more useless junk and a lot of wasted time. There was an Evo event going on in Ark, which meant 2 times rates of pretty much everything. 2 times breeding, 2 times taming, and even 2 times hexagons. So I figured I'd take this opportunity to farm up some more hexagons. I had been using them regularly to buy meat for my baby dinos, because farming meat takes some time, especially since I don't have a giga. So I was burning through hexagons pretty fast. I grabbed my wyvern because I knew he'd make quick work of the Velonosaur stock beta. I started the mission, and not long into it, unfortunately, it didn't go well. This spot was bugged, and something really weird was happening. My character wasn't showing as on the wyvern, but I could use its attacks. Also, I couldn't fly away, and there was some direwolves just chomping away at my wyvern. I started to panic because I did not want to lose my wyvern this way. It would be an absolute travesty, especially since it just finished raising. So I logged out to try to fix the problem, and when I logged back in, sure enough, my character had died. So I had to respawn back at my base, which was far away from my wyvern. I panicked as I knew as soon as I logged in, the wolves could continue to chomp on my wyvern. So I rushed back over to the area where I died. As I got close, a sigh of relief washed over me as I saw him flapping his wings over my dead body. I decided not to risk it again, and I just went home. Overall, a pretty unproductive day, but after that big scare, I just had to call it. And even though I am extremely behind on taming, like extremely, really extremely, super far, way off track, I knew I'd be able to make quick work of things now that I had my proper taming items, and I should be able to tame multiple things every single day. I decided the best way to do this going forward was to build up a bunch of kibble and go on mass taming sprees all at once. You remember that Nicolas Cage movie Gone in 60 Seconds? Of course you do. It's an awesome movie. That's the strategy that I'm using. They did all that prep work, and then they stole all those cars in one night. It didn't really make sense until it kind of did. So that's my plan.